New at 4, the man accused of stabbing a woman more than 10 times in North Fargo says he didn't do it. 56-year-old Fabian Henderson pleaded not guilty. He's charged with 3 felonies in Cass County District Court, including attempted murder, robbery, and aggravated assault. He was arrested after he called police to report a woman dying. The female victim was found in an apartment entryway with several stab wounds. The victim told officers she met Henderson downtown and invited him over for a drink. Documents say eventually the victim yelled at Henderson and he began to punch her before pulling out a knife, stabbing her and leaving her with the phone. After Henderson was arrested, he told police in part, quote, "I stab people really for the simple fact I want to kill them." Police are investigating the death of a woman whose body was found in the snow during this week's blizzard. Minot police found a 73-year-old woman dead yesterday morning near the city's post office. No foul play is suspected. The victim's identity is being withheld until relatives are notified. Police in Watford City have a similar case going on. They're investigating the death of a 60-year-old man found dead outside yesterday in the snow. Also, no indication of any criminal activity. Hutch joins us now with a first look at how the weekend is shaping up. Hutch?
Well, we have a little bit of a chance to quiet down, not necessarily warm up too much in most locations as we look in on the Grand Forks area. As we have white ground there, a few flakes continue to drift through the skies from time to time, and most of us are indeed cloudy from time to time. We get excited, see a little peak of sunshine. But again, this storm system really taking a toll out in the western and central part of North Dakota, where we got between 2 and 3 foot snowfall reports and drifts that were ridiculously high. Now today, as a result of all the snow and the cold air moving in, we're as cold as we've ever been in 100 years in the Fargo area. 27, the coldest high temperature that we've had on this date. That was back in 1904. There's a few other cold ones out there. This is the highs that we've got to today. Did we get to 27? No, not yet here in Fargo. 24 so far. So it could be the coldest day in over 100 years. With northwest winds, it sure feels that way, gusting to 30 miles per hour. Periods of light snow showers here and there. No significant accumulations, but reinforcing the slippery along I-94, Highway 2, and points north. Easter Sunday, another system works its way in. Out west in the morning, Devil's Lake Basin and James River Valley midday, and in the afternoon and evening here in the valley and points in western Minnesota. We'll have hour-by-hour details and a look at our best estimate of where the heaviest snow will be and how much here in a minute.
Did you say coldest day in more than 100 years?
On this date.
Oh boy,
yes.
Well, that's a record you don't want to break. Thanks,
no,
Hutch.
It's not my favorite.
Another reminder not to use cruise control on slick roads. A semi rolled over this morning on Highway 9 north of Highway 10. The call came in to Highway Patrol about 11 a.m. No one was hurt. A woman in the Northern Valley is being charged with a gun violation after police say she shot through her living room floor into the basement. Police arrested 38-year-old Jill Mudge for reckless endangerment. Officers were called about a gun discharge last night in the 1200 block of 18th Street South in Grand Forks. They say a bullet went through the floor and hit a wall in the basement. No one was hurt, but police say the woman's boyfriend was near her when the gun went off. A woman may have saved herself by giving Fargo police officers a silent signal during a traffic stop. Officers pulled over a vehicle in South Fargo and suspected a man with a warrant for assault was in the car. A woman in the driver's seat mouthed the words, "Help me," as officers were talking to her. Then they say a man sat up in the back seat and put that woman in a chokehold. The 2 officers were able to intervene. Jeremy Millens was arrested for aggravated assault, terrorizing, felonious restraint, and assaulting a police officer. Russia is vowing to step up missile attacks against Ukraine a day after Ukrainian officials took out one of its key warships. Russia is still not acknowledging that attack. Natalie Brand has the latest from Washington.
Russian forces are stepping up attacks in Mariupol, the southern port city in Ukraine already battered by weeks of fighting. Ukraine's defense ministry spokesman says for the first time Russia used long-range bombers in the region as they fight to capture the city. But Russia has suffered the loss of the flagship of its Black Sea fleet. A senior defense official says Ukraine struck the Russian warship Moskva with 2 anti-ship missiles. Russia is now threatening to ramp up attacks in Ukraine's capital of Kyiv after previously pulling back forces from that area. In the most powerful explosions heard in 2 weeks, Russia says it hit a missile factory on the city's outskirts overnight.
As Ukraine braces for what's expected to be a major Russian offensive in the country's east, the U.S. says it will begin training Ukrainian forces on some of the weapon systems it's sending to help Ukraine defend itself.
While some of these systems will require some familiarization and some basic training, it's not exorbitant. It won't take a long time.
CBS News has confirmed Russia sent a diplomatic note to the U.S. warning that the new U.S. and NATO shipments could bring unpredictable consequences. 50 days into the invasion, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky released this nighttime video address to the nation, saying Ukrainians should be proud of putting up a fierce resistance thus far. Natalie Brand, CBS News, the White House.
Today, Ukraine's president reportedly asked President Biden to designate Russia a state sponsor of terrorism. The UN says more than 5 million people have now fled Ukraine since the Russian invasion began. Following an Easter Passover break, Minnesota state lawmakers will return on Tuesday with just 5 weeks left to decide what to do with the state's $9.25 billion budget surplus, plus $1.2 billion in unspent federal pandemic relief. A deeply divided legislature have yet to translate their handful of bipartisan successes to bigger deals on taxes, spending, and policy. Governor Walz has been promoting his own $2.7 billion local jobs and projects bonding proposal throughout the state. The major issues to be discussed include the public services budget, bonuses for frontline workers, funding to fight the bird flu, and giving out tax rebates. There is no constitutional requirement that the legislature pass anything this session, given that it approved the current 2-year budget last session. Any untouched surplus will stay in the bank for next year, though Democratic Governor Tim Walz would decide how to use the unspent federal aid if lawmakers can't agree. We're seeing the biggest rise in food costs in decades, and roughly 40 million Americans who get help buying groceries through federal food stamp programs are seeing their benefits take a hit. Payments to those with low income are dropping as states decide to end COVID disaster declarations and get out of the federal program that made them eligible for heavy increases in SNAP benefits. Nebraska was the first and most aggressive, ending at 4 months into the pandemic. Since then, other states have followed, including North Dakota, where benefits have been scaled back. There's a new way you can test for COVID, and this one is very different. It's a breath test just approved by the FDA. Skylar Henry reports from Washington.
The FDA has granted emergency use authorization for the Inspect IR COVID-19 breathalyzer. It's just like a breathalyzer test for alcohol, but instead detects chemical compounds in breath samples which indicate COVID-19. The non-invasive tube can return results in less than 3 minutes. The new authorization comes as COVID cases increase across the U.S. because of 2 Omicron subvariants. The highest rates per capita over the past 14 days were in Vermont, Rhode Island, New York, Massachusetts, and Alaska.
Cases may be rising, but some school districts are backing off from COVID protocols as the severity of the virus declines for most who are infected.
The Minneapolis School District will drop its mask mandate starting Monday. Contact tracing will end, and quarantine time for unvaccinated adults and students exposed to COVID will decrease from 10 days to 5. In California, a mandate requiring vaccinations for students will be pushed back a year.
Some parents just may need more time. They may need more data. They may need to watch other kids get vaccinated and just have that time.
The move comes despite Pfizer's plan to seek FDA authorization for a COVID booster shot for kids as young as 5. A group that fights for vaccine choice says some parents are relieved about the delay.
We at Let Them Breathe and Let Them Choose have been educating families on their rights and how to speak up for their kids. And it's, really good to see that at least that is making a difference.
The vaccine mandate now slides to July 2023. Skylar Henry, CBS News, Washington.
The new breath test will be conducted by licensed healthcare providers. It's more than 91% accurate at detecting positive samples and has a 99% accuracy rate for negative samples. The CDC is keeping count of this season's flu outbreaks and has tallied at least 3.8 million infections, but it's not over. Well into April, the CDC is now tracking an increase in flu activity across the country. Dr. William Schaffer specializes in infectious diseases and says this spring spike is unusual but not surprising.
The best explanation as to why we're seeing a slight increase in flu is that we've taken off our masks, we're getting out and about, we're going to indoor activities.
Another factor in the spread of the flu was that this year's vaccine offered little protection against infection. The CDC found in a study last month the shot was just 16% effective at preventing mild or moderate cases, but doctors expect that as summer approaches, flu will go back into hibernation. Meanwhile, the CDC is updating its COVID advisory system for international travelers. The agency will only issue level 4 warnings, meaning do not travel to a country under special circumstances like rapidly escalating cases and extremely high case counts. That updated system goes into effect on Monday.